There we go. There's the sound. Sorry. Sorry. When one thing goes wrong, it all starts cascading. All right. I'm going to wait for the sound to hit, which ought to be in about 20 seconds. Okay. Hello? Now you should be. I know you're hearing it now because I just didn't have it on. So anyway, welcome guys to Astro Bookshelf Hangout. My name is Tony Darnell, and we are live on Thursday at 3:00 every week doing something. And this week we're going to be featuring work that's being done on Dr. Brian Keating's channel. The link to his channel, by the way, is in the description box. And he is also he runs a podcast, and he does interviews with lots of different really cool people that if you don't know about this interview session, you should definitely check it out because he interviews all the cool people out there. And Adam, thanks, man. Thanks for the help. I appreciate it. It is always a help to get support on this channel and this stream. So thank you very much. What we're doing right now, a little bit of a technical issue. Brian is trying to make sure that the stream is happening on his channel. Have you been able to verify it yet, Brian? All right. And yeah, I can hear you. You're on the thing.
The go live button is off. It does not show the.
It's not showing. All right. Well,
go live is not working.
Oh, okay.
Analytics, stream health. Right. And you have my key. I sent you a new key.
Oh, you sent me a new key.
I sent you a key this morning. Yeah.
You sent me a URL, but not a key.
Okay. Let's try this. I'm gonna reply.
I assumed it was the same key as before. So.
Try this one. Just
all right. All right, I will turn off that stream to you, and I'll take the new stream key.
Okay.
And
hopefully that'll work.
And are you emailing it to me?
I just did, yeah.
All right. So let's do this all live, man. Why not? Because it's fun. Oh, yeah, that is a different key. That explains it.
All right.
Just takes two up until now, it's been the same key.
I don't know why.
All right, let me go here. All right, that's it. And the YouTube stream URL I put in this morning, so that should still be accurate.
Yeah.
All right. I am now. It's weird that it connected and showed me it was connected. Okay, it says it's online. Are you getting the stream?
Let me refresh.
You should need to refresh. It should just show up.
It says excellent connection. Go live. Yeah.
Yep. All right. There you go.
That was it.
Okay.
All right. Technical difficulties.
So just push go live and
Oops.
You are live on your channel.
Yeah. All right. You see me. I see you. Let me check myself here. Good.
Hans, thank you, man. Thank you as always. You are rocks. You guys are rock stars. You really. I thank you so much for your help. You're not allowed into my country for donations. That's okay, Andrew. It's just good to have you here anyway. So hey, Peter Q, it's good to see you. Greetings, Florida neighbor Rooney. Neighbor Rooney. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, so you're also in Central Florida, I take it. Well, we should have some kind of hangout. Brian is muted too. He should be okay. Yeah, I think you guys hear him now. All right.
Yeah. I should be
hey, Dan. Hope things are good up in Canada. Galaxia, John Subful, Adam Synergy, all of you guys, welcome. It's good to have you back. We are going to get started in just a moment. Tom Garcia is like, hey, Tony, you must be a neighbor because I see the same pop-up ads on your computer screen as I get. St. Augustine to Daytona Beach area. That's exactly right. I'm in the Daytona Beach area. So it's sad that you're seeing my pop-up ads because I end up sharing my screen all the time and I don't have an ad blocker. So, yeah. All right. Okay, well, let's get started. So I think we're finally there. Dr. Brian Keating is with us. You have been interviewing Eric Weinstein, and we talked about him a little bit in part one. We don't really have a clip to highlight this video, but we don't need one because the link, by the way, to the full part two of his video, and at least on the Deep Astronomy channel, is in the description box of this video, so you can watch it after we're done introducing it to you. Don't go now, just wait until we do it then, all right? So, Brian, for people who are new here, tell people, first of all, what your podcast is all about. Second of all, what the second part of this interview was that you did with Eric.
So I do the Into the Impossible podcast, which is a production of the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination. I have had on tremendously important intellectuals, thinkers, and people that are so-called influencers. And I'm trying to learn these tactics and tricks that they use in order to provide content that my audience enjoys. And a couple of months ago, I reached out to an old friend I hadn't been in great contact with, simply because every time I invited him to come to San Diego, I never got a reply to accept the invitation. But now that's ghosted. Eric Weinstein. And by the way, it's Weinstein, not Weinstein. And there's a Seinfeld episode about that. But the way to remember, the easiest way to remember?
No.
So he's interested in overthrowing Einstein.
So
just think Einstein and Weinstein. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
And awesome. So that's the easiest way to know. And not Harvey. And not Harvey.
Apologies to Eric Weinstein.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So he might be listening. I've been in touch with him in the last couple of days, and we're trying to produce basically a cage match. And I'm interested to know if you guys on Tony's channel and my channel, how would you like to see a battle royale between Sean Carroll, Eric Weinstein, Stephen Wolfram, maybe throw Ed Whitten into the mix. In all seriousness, we're thinking about doing some kind of a production, maybe a webinar. I mean, no one has agreed to do this, but this is just kind of our idea in partnership with some other physicists on YouTube. And I don't know if, who will say yes, but I think, the number one complaint that I get is, oh, well, why hasn't Eric published his results? And why are you having him on? Again, he has a fundamental antipathy towards the current state of academia. Now, you may agree with that. You may vehemently disagree with that. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that. The subtitle of today's Astro Bookshelf between me and Tony is The Trouble with Academia. So I think it would be naive to say everything's fine in academia. And equally, I think it would be naive to say everything's wrong with academia. So the question is, which parts are worth salvaging? Which parts need improvement? And this is a big theme of my book, Losing the Nobel Prize. I don't want to get rid of the Nobel Prize. I don't want to lose it completely. The title is a double entendre. But instead, I want to reform it and use its current stature to protect it against assaults from outside and inside. And so far, they haven't really listened to me. But the question is, maybe or not, maybe we can get some traction if we bring in outsiders. And that's the only way to make change, right, Tony? If I say you can't criticize the president, Tony, because you're not the president. Well, that's a stupid argument. Of course, we can criticize anyone we want.
That's right.
And I think to invalidate his opinion because he doesn't want to subscribe to the classic journal publication referee narrative, there's some validity to that. And in the interview with him, I kind of challenged him here and there. And the most fun part, maybe we'll get to, is his concept. What should an academic establishment look like? How should academia look? And what would he do differently? What would he teach? What would he do without? And those were fascinating things to hear him discuss. And it was sort of a pre-Father's Day. Originally, I was going to have just Eric be my Father's Day guest. I had Sasha Sagan. You remember I had Sasha. We still haven't talked about Sasha Sagan. In between me interviewing her for my Mother's Day podcast on the Into the Impossible podcast, I had her mother, Ann Jurian, on, and she was a delight. And I've had on Ash, I'm so backed up, Tony, and I have so much awesome content. One request for folks out there: iTunes is this mysterious force. On YouTube, we can look up how many views. There's 10,000 people watching, almost every one of Tony's videos. I get about 1% of that. But I can hope. And but on iTunes, they track reviews and ratings of the podcast. So I'm going to put a link to the website that you can download if you're on an iPhone or whatever right now. I think you can go to it even if you're not. But please go to this site and leave a review. Leave a review and a rating, because that's how Apple determines whether or not I should get advertising on their platform. And the hardest thing is getting the word out.
Right.
And sorry, Tony, to blabber on so long. But
no, this is great. This is why we're here. We're here to promote what you're doing and to get the word out. So keep blabbing, man. I just want to. I just want to point out though, iTunes is okay. I mean, iTunes, it is what it is. If you've got the Apple ecosystem on you, and then it's a great way to listen to podcasts. But you do syndicate to Spotify, right, and to other places, right?
I actually don't know. I have so much other stuff going on in my life with my
All right. Well, let me just school you into something real quick here.
Yeah.
You need to get on Anchor.fm.
Okay.
And Anchor.fm is owned by Spotify.
Okay.
And it will syndicate. One of the reasons you want to be on it is it will automatically put you on every platform out there, including Spotify, including Stitcher, all these other things where podcasts are. Stitcher is big for cars. Cars apparently have this built into their operating system. So this is another way to get the word out. So I put both of my podcasts on Anchor.fm, and then it syndicates it for me. It's free, and I can also monetize it. So it's not like SoundCloud, where eventually you've got to pay money or to get any kind of plays out of it. And it'll put it on iTunes if you're already there, so it won't do it, but it would if you weren't. So just look into that. Anchor.fm will get you on all the platforms besides iTunes. But yes, you're right. Still go and do a review.
Yeah, please do that. So thank you, Tony. I appreciate everything that you do, and not just for me personally, but you do so much for the community of astronomy. And you provide a wonderful forum. I just can't say enough. I'm a big supporter. I've been a supporter even longer than I've been a guest. But the reason I brought up Eric in this Mother's Day, Father's Day thing is that in between having Eric on back in May, remember this is part 2 of our interview, so check out part 1 after we're done chatting today. But I did an interview with none other than Jim Simons, and it's actually his first ever podcast, I believe, that he's ever done. He's a reclusive, in some sense, billionaire who's really revolutionized, transformed for the better basic science. So he and the Simons Foundation support basic research. They're not trying to target, cures for cancer or something like that, as admirable as that is, or malaria, like the Gates Foundation. And those are certainly admirable. But he's only focused on math and computing and fundamental physics. And that includes my Simons Observatory project that I co-lead with 3 other of the most brilliant professors, astronomers in the world. Mark Devlin, Suzanne Staggs, Adrian Lee are the spokespersons, and I'm the director of the project office here in San Diego. And we run this observatory, and it wouldn't have happened without Jim Simons. So I had the honor of interviewing him, which I'm going to air this Sunday on his first ever podcast. I'm quite proud of it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. I'm glad you got that. So what is the call to, get me back to this, what'd you call it? This WWF thing, this Total Fighting Championship thing. What's that? I mean, how do we support this? Because I want to see Sean Carroll and all these other guys, but mostly Sean Carroll, in a ring doing what with these? I mean, I want to see this. So is this a special webinar event you're planning, or what?
Yeah, the tentative idea is to partner with a very well-known YouTube channel, which I'm not going to mention just yet, because this is a channel that has millions of subscribers, and that does phenomenal work across all of science, but in particular has a deep interest in exploring the fundamental mysteries of the Standard Model, the theory of everything, and whether or not it exists. And we're going to partner hopefully with this channel. And then our aim is to attract almost, like cinematic quality webinar where we'd have, invitation, and we'd have later rebroadcast on YouTube. And you and I would certainly be involved in the debrief of it as usual. But this webinar would cover, some of the greatest people in science. Again, no one's agreed to this. It's just kind of my idea with my friend and producer here in San Diego, along with this other well-known YouTube channel. We just haven't inked out the final details of it. Well, and it's not for profit. We're not going to make any money off it. But the idea is to get the greatest. So here's my dream team. And again, no one said yes, but it would be Sean Carroll, Ed Witten, the reputed to be the smartest, human being alive. Maybe Lisa Randall, who's one of the most brilliant people. Today's her birthday. Today's her birthday. So send her some birthday wishes.
Happy birthday, Lisa.
Yeah, she's
Because she's watching.
yeah, I'm sure she is. She's incredible. I look up to her tremendously. She's one of these people who rejected me to give a blurb on losing the Nobel Prize, but I still love her anyway. She's too busy doing great stuff. So Lisa Randall, Sean Carroll, Stefan Alexander, who I had on my podcast, Jan Levin, who I had on my podcast. And then have these, Jim Gates, who I've had on the podcast, have these intellects come together with experimentalists. And normally they'll get together, Brian Greene, and they'll talk about these ideas. And there's never really the kind of sober experimentalist sitting there saying what you're proposing. For example, Ed Witten has an idea, and I haven't looked at it in great depth yet. And I want to invite him on my podcast too, to test to see if there's a planet 9. Now, you and I grew up with 9 planets. So if you had told us when we were in the 80s or whatever, when we were both kids, there's 9 planets, you'd say, oh, so what? Even you might think that we could send a probe to Pluto like we did with Deep Horizons. But New Horizons. But on the other hand, it was demoted, right, by Neil deGrasse Tyson, Mike Brown, and others. So it's not. So now there's
by the IAU. They're just taking credit for it.
That's right. Yes, I know. And maybe that's why they won't come on my podcast. Who knows? Anyway, but having a planet 9,
thanks, Tom,
as possibly a black hole or some primordial other object that's not planetary in nature. So Ed Witten has this idea that you send this tiny spaceship out to planet 9. It takes 100 years, and you measure, as I understand it, again, I've only looked at this in a journal club, and then you measure a time delay between radio waves sent between this microscopic object, and it will have a different time delay if planet 9 is not a planet but a black hole. And that differential time delay is like half a millisecond or even less maybe. And that half a millisecond has to be measured out of a 100-year-long voyage. So very speculative, but it would be interesting to talk about this. So will we ever make direct contact with a black hole? I mean, it would be startling if there's a black hole happens to be orbiting.
Brian, it'd be more than startling. It'd be pants pooping scary. Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah. Well, it depends. If it's the size of Pluto and it has the gravitational force of Pluto or something, it's benign, right? So not all black holes devour you for dinner. Although my friend Jan Levin, whose episode will come out shortly, her next book, and I'm going to have her back on, is called The Black Hole Survival Guide. So that could be couldn't be more timely if indeed.
Talk about astronomy you can use. All right. Well, Galaxia, you're right. There is a new study that Planet 9 might not even exist, and there were observational biases on it. That's very true. A lot of new information coming out about this idea. So let me just offer you words of encouragement to get this set up. I will participate and help in any way that I can. But let's get to Eric before too much time goes by. I wanna ask you about. Galaxia wants to know about his theory of the universe. Science instead of sociology of science. But also, let's talk a little bit about this academia problematicness as well. So
he
pick something.
It was kind of embarrassing a little bit because he mentioned someone who's a good friend of mine that he met this person a few years back and said, do you know about when the decline of academia started in America? And this person, who's a high-ranking academician, said no. And then he didn't understand that, according to Eric, this really began in the 1970s. And Eric has very controversial views about why this is happening, and what the role of the National Science Foundation is, what the role of, in his words, the kind of labels like attacks on emails or attacks on semiconductors, because these are all the output of physics that have led to great industrial profits and gains in the capitalist economy, which we know and love, most of us, but not all of us. And because of that, he thinks that we're squandering what is the sort of natural right byproduct of our field. And again, mostly he's advocating for theoretical physics to be funded. But the clear message that he has is that academia, it has become incredibly siloed.
Oh man. Okay, it's starting to go back a little bit. I'm sorry, but nobody was listening to any of that. Okay, I've got green on my stream again. I'm sorry. I must be having upload issues. It just
YouTube is not receiving enough video.
Yeah, it should be fixed now.
Okay, should I refresh?
No, you don't have to do anything. Just leave it, and it'll pick back up. It was a problem with my ISP.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Can you pick back up? I'm really sorry. I hate to interrupt you when you're going.
So I was talking about, kind of the past history according to Eric, of what actually is the goal of a university, and it's not to make just these focused individuals. Not that it's not important to be the world's expert in a given field of academia, but that there should be cross pollination. There should be, in his words, physicists should know about the worm, C. elegans, and understand its connectome, and that will have surprising. And I pointed out, Rosalind Franklin, who helped identify the double helix structure of DNA. Some say she was unfairly robbed, I do, of the Nobel Prize in the 1960s, both for being a woman potentially, but also for being dead, which I think is the worst reason not to award a Nobel Prize. But anyway, we had this wonderful, kind of resonance, at least on that front, where, it takes multi and interdisciplinary studies, and that, a theorist like maybe Watson or Crick or whoever could not have fully understood it without an experimentalist perspective. And so I think he broadens that to now say, well, all fields of the hard sciences. It's clear to me that he doesn't have a great deal of respect for the social sciences, et cetera. And I'm not going to debate that. That's his opinion. I believe they can have value, but I want to.
Well, that's not an uncommon view among a lot of scientists. They don't look at that as a science.
Yeah.
So it's applying scientific methodology to something that they feel is not fundamentally a scientific endeavor. But
yeah, and so in terms of actually understanding what he would put at, I created this Weinstein University, this fictitious Weinstein University, what would be taught there, and certainly. Right. He believes that physics suffers from this public relations nightmare, which is that we have the greatest content and we have the worst marketers. We have the most, brilliant talent, so to speak, and we have the worst, possible showman. So it gets left to a handful of people who have an agenda, and that agenda is not too dissimilar. Again, this is don't kill the messenger. This is what he's saying.
No, I'm with you. I'm actually with him on this. Keep going.
Yeah. So their agenda is to parrot back the scientific, the academic hierarchy that is put in place, according to him, this monolithic approach that string theory and supersymmetry are really the most promising paths, even though we don't see things directly in particle physics that have any relation to supersymmetry, extra dimensions, string theory, etc. So he views this, and Sabine Hassenfelder, who I had on last week as well, viewed this as a symptom, a byproduct of another type of bias and prejudice in science. So we're all familiar with authority bias. Einstein said this, therefore you can't challenge it, even though every scientist says there's no such thing as a god or a pope or a bishop of science, but it's not really true. If you remember your physics classes in high school or even in college, they would say so-and-so did this, and then he won the Nobel Prize. A lot of times that's done. And it rewrites the way that history is perceived. And I know Eric agrees with me on that. And so because of that, there is a hierarchy, whether or not we admit it. There's an authoritarian sort of discipline that comes from the top. Right now, the most brilliant person alive, according to many people, is Ed Witten. And Ed Witten has dedicated his life to understanding things in the basic properties of string theory. So much so that he won the Fields Medal. The first physicist to win the Fields Medal, I believe. And that is given away, for his contributions, which are really in the properties of these extra dimensional representations called groups that have applicability in string theory. And yet string theory itself hasn't been verified. So it's not like Murray Gell-Mann, who came up with, SU3 cross SU2 cross U1, winning the Fields Medal for discovering, this group structure. No, that never happened. And so it's curious to me. And I think Ed is as brilliant as anybody. And Eric basically agrees that, he is the smartest human being on earth. And yet, he'll put out things which I view as completely impractical, like measuring to the microsecond spacecraft traveling for a century. It doesn't mean we shouldn't look at it, analyze it. It just means we shouldn't say everything this person says cannot be challenged. And I think Eric is playing this role. He is not within the academy. He is outside the academy. And that gives him the ability to make a critique without fear of repercussions. And so I actually asked him, would Weinstein University have tenure? And guess what he said?
No.
He said, you're absolutely wrong. He said it would have tenure.
Well, I had a 50-50 chance, didn't I?
Good job. Those are some sweet odds there, Tony. He said it would. He said it would because it's absolutely essential that you have this academic freedom and license to choose paths that may or may not turn out to be correct. And then I pushed back on him a little bit, and I said, look, I don't know until this COVID crisis came about. Every single one of my students, this is my biggest accomplishment, my proudest accomplishment as an academic. I've never shared this with you, but it's that every single one of my students have been fully employed. Now you may joke, oh, well, big deal. No, it's incredibly important. I've helped men and women get jobs that paid for their families, that paid for their kids. And I played a role in that. I take great pride. I've been a small businessman running an operation that has a multi-million-dollar a year budget that produces no widgets, but still has to come up and feed all these different priorities that we have. I take great pride in that. But I say every single one of those until COVID, and even with COVID, I think it's going to be okay. But until COVID, I had 14 graduate students out of 16 graduate students that got their PhD in the last 16 years in my laboratory. They all had not only full employment, most of them had multiple offers. You know how proud it's like, I don't know. It makes me incredibly proud. And I love
a great
that.
Advisor for sure.
Well, I always say, they say when a student does poorly, it reflects poorly on the teacher.
That's
and
right.
So I use the contraposition of that argument.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, you're throwing so much, and I have to get a comment in once in a while here because I'm going to just latch on to what you just said about how proud you are.
Yeah.
Of your own students being employed and having multiple job offers and things like this. One of the problems in academia, in my opinion, is that there is an unhealthy reliance on advisors if you want to make it in the world. So if you're a graduate student and you are trying to you want to become a postdoc, your success entirely depends on the advisor that you have. Your students are lucky because they have an advisor who tries to keep them, who engages them, who looks at it. You look at it as your responsibility to promote them, their work, and get them started. I can't tell you how many advisors I've seen out there who've let their students just basically languish and have used them basically for slave labor. And they were, they had to really fight to get noticed in the field at all. To me, that is one of the many problems of academia.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
It's sad. And actually, that's one very personal grievance that Eric talks about publicly in an interview he did with Lex Friedman. You can find that on Lex's channel. And he and I have talked about that offline. It's basically similar to what he and I talked about. I didn't want to get into that with him on my podcast, but I'll talk about it now. He feels like he was unfairly denied opportunities by his multiple. He didn't really have a single advisor at Harvard, so he faults, or I was about to say credit, but really he blames Harvard specifically for inculcating an environment where they basically said that he had to leave Harvard and he had to go away and then come back, and they didn't, and they did so, in his opinion, again, it's all his opinion, to maintain an almost cabal-like isolation of Eric and free thinkers away from the orthodoxy that Harvard's mathematics and mathematical physics department, theoretical physics group was maintaining. Again, I am not in that field, but this is his claim that he was basically wronged by his advisors at Harvard, and he sees this throughout. And one of the clips that I'm going to put on my channel in a couple of
that.
Yeah.
I mean, without even knowing, it sounds like something that would happen.
And he actually cites Barack Obama, whose father went to Harvard and had a similar experience where he had his father, he claims, Eric says that Obama claims that his father, he claims, was sent back to Africa to do some stuff and wasn't allowed to be present at some part of his PhD review. Now that should be public record. I don't know anything about that. Just one piece of evidence that Eric brought. So I started thinking, is this a problem with Harvard? A lot of things happen at Harvard, and it kind of is looked at, right, as the gold standard of not just academia, but of intellectualism, of thought and in society, and it has a tremendous influence on society. And yet these people there, Lisa Randall, I just mentioned, is a good friend of mine. She's there, and she's had struggles and challenges with their administration as well. She was the first tenured professor at MIT, female tenured professor at MIT in the physics department. And she's an outstanding scientist, and yet she'll still have troubles at these high levels of academia. And I asked Jim Simons, I said, what were you like as a PhD advisor? He's the 36th richest person in the world or something like that. And he he got there after being an academic. And that was really his first career, was after, was running a large department, in this case, the math department at State University of New York. He did so, and he shared with me his ideas on how to do so. But it came down, and the message I feel like Eric missed is one of what I call love. And obviously it should be platonic, but I can't teach you something, Tony, if you're scared of me. If I say, Tony, those glasses
or
are really
intimidated by you.
Yeah, I have to feel not love, like, it's just there. I think there's like 10 different words for love in Greek, and, the only one of which is like romantic, but the others are like kinship, friendship, camaraderie, trust, and they all go together. Eric didn't find that, and he feels like that is the most important thing. One corollary to what you said, Tony, a few minutes ago, which I wholeheartedly agree with, about academia and how important an advisor is. There's a corollary, which is that it doesn't matter what you study. It almost doesn't matter what you study. In that, if you have a good advisor and you have a good relationship with him or her, and he or she treats you with love and kindness and respect, and gives you the freedom to explore and to think for yourself, but maintains a certain different of guardrails just to make sure you don't go off the cliff, then you can learn from anybody. I truly believe that. I could have been a different physicist, had my advisor, studied a different thing when he was in grad school. In fact, I thought I would be doing something different when I was an undergraduate, when I went to graduate school, but it turned out I became a cosmologist. And that's mainly based on the strength of my two advisors at the time, my PhD advisor, Peter Timby at University of Madison, Wisconsin-Madison currently, but he was back at Brown. And then my father, who also had a tremendous influence on me to study, theoretical foundational aspects of physics. So you're right, Eric's right. But the problem is we don't get any training. I never got training in what are the basics of educational pedagogy.
Well, that's another problem with academia, Brian, is that it doesn't value this relationship. There's more than any other endeavor for human beings. The apprenticeship of becoming a scientist is among the most important, and yet a university will look at a faculty member with two things in mind. One, their fame or relative renown, and two, the amount of money that they can bring into their university. Everything else is ancillary and nice to have. If you're a good teacher, oh, that's great. But to me, that should be the number one thing, because your research is important. Do your research, but it should not trump everything else. You should be able to, in fact, you should value more the work you're doing with your grad students. In fact, you should, I just had this idea, maybe it exists, but you should be held responsible for and given, and what's the word I'm looking for? Given credit for based on the work your students do. If your students are doing great work, then that reflects on you positively in the university. If you're getting papers published, if you're bringing in, if you have the potential to bring in money or whatever, the focus should be on the student in that case.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to look up this quote that I heard once from the famous physicist, Nobel Prize winner, Isidore Isaac Robbie, and he said something to the effect like, as a professor, you are paid to do research and make money, basically, or get grants. But if you're a gentleman, you also teach. And I was thinking, like, what if you're a parent? Like, again, Father's Day is coming up, and we both have a bunch of kids between us, and I wonder, like, what if that was our, responsibility? Like, if you're a gentleman, you also love your kid. No, it should be number one. And in fact, I brought this up with, I think I was talking to Adam Reese. Actually, I had him on the podcast. Again, I've got this huge backlog. I'd love to know how you deal with these backlogs of these wonderful guests that you get on the show without pissing them off, because it's like, I want to release it. I know the people out there are going to love these interviews with Adam Rees, Nobel Prize winner. And I was talking to him, and I was like, you value yourself as a teacher, but we were never taught on how to teach. And I said, the one place that I learned how to be a teacher, and that's the last place you would expect it. And he said, no. And I said, the federal government. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, one of my aspirations is to use my pilot's license to someday become a commercial flight instructor. And to become a commercial flight instructor, you have to be familiar with what's known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's the only document in the whole Federal Register. I mean, try to go to the IRS or the Federal Communications Commission and find a pyramid, that shows what needs a human being has in order to feel loved and safe and taken. It's like love is one of the needs that Maslow identified. Like, imagine that in the IRS. Anyway, why is it in the FAA handbook? Well, because if a student feels fear for his or her safety, they're not going to absorb anything. If someone, feels like their physiological needs are not met, they're not going to be able to process things. And there, in flight instruction, what do the consequences mean? They don't just mean you lose a Nobel Prize. They mean you die, and you maybe kill a lot of other people. So if it's important and good enough for the federal government, it should at least be important enough and good enough for UC San Diego and Harvard and other places. So we don't teach teachers what students need to be students. I'm hoping to change that someday, and I'd love to get feedback from people on what kinds of people make for good teachers. And there's a wonderful lecture by Bill Gates, or there's an essay by Bill Gates called "The Best Teacher I Never Had," and it's about Feynman. And of course, Feynman was no flawless individual. Nobody is, but he was known for his pedagogical skills. And yet he didn't have that many PhD advice. I think I have twice as many as he ever had. And so and again, the quantity is not that important, but the quality should be. So I guess wrapping it up in terms of this little segue in academia and Eric Weinstein, I do feel like he has a point. If he was truly excluded, and I only have his word to take from it, and you should look up that interview with Lex Fridman, and maybe someone can put it in the comments. But he talks about Harvard and just this awful, like, quite frankly, I think it was traumatic for him. And, he's this huge, burly, guy that's just so tough and intellectually tough. But I saw a vulnerability, and I heard that in his words. And it made me think, the guy has some very provocative things about science, but also about the process of science in academia.
Yeah, at its core, science is a human endeavor, and from that point, all problems and good things arise from it, and the practice of it, and the practice of being involved in science is based on our humanity, and it comes with all the others, the inherent problem or issues that come with that. So I don't have a lot of time with you. I want to ask Galaxia's question, but before I do that, I have a question, and that is, it's funny to me. You said many times already that Ed Witten is one of considered the most smartest person in the world. I've never heard that, but I'll take your word for it. Also, Eric Weinstein's obviously very smart as well. Yeah, and yet they have a problem with social sciences being considered a science, and yet they will devote their lives to something like string theory and these theories that have no hope of getting verified in using the scientific tools we're used to engaging in. How do they reconcile that? I mean, it seems to me like, string theory is borderline pseudoscience because, all you can say about it is the math is great. And this cosmic landscape from Leonard Susskind and all of these other, people are engaging in something I'm going to question is actually science, because how can we ever verify any of this? And all you can say is it's the math. The math works out. Well, then that means that math must equal reality if you're going to accept this as a science. So what do you think they would have to say about that comment that I just made, that this stuff isn't science?
Well, I think that, there is a sense that science depends on what can be falsified. You and I have talked about that. I've talked about that with Sabine Hasenfelder. I actually don't subscribe to that. I think that that's a limitation.
Oh, it's only one part of it. There's not like we don't have the technology to do it, and maybe one day we'll discover gravitational waves like with Einstein's relativity. It's that we cannot fundamentally ever hope to follow any of this stuff up with observations of any kind that we can bring into this universe. This will always be outside of our experience.
I don't agree with that. I mean, again, technology.
Really?
Well, I think that there are things. Again, I don't agree that falsification is the sine qua non of scientific.
Agreed. I don't.
Yeah.
That's not the only thing
Right.
that makes something science.
But why would you say? I mean, again, if I asked you in 1979, would we detect gravitational waves from from black holes or the Big Bang? You would say no. Also, probably,
but that has always been theoretically possible. Right? This other stuff is theoretically impossible. We cannot measure anything shorter than the Planck length. Our laws of physics already tell us that. And yet these strings are much far smaller than that. And they have dimensions on order of, depending on who you talk to, 11 to 10,000. I don't know how many. But it's a ridiculous number of dimensions that we're never going to be able to interact with. It's not like we don't have the technology now, and if we just wait a bit, we'll be able to detect it later. It's not like that. It's like we're never going to be able to. Many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, never going to be able to verify that.
Well, according to Sean, if you listen to my interview with him back in December on my channel, I'll put a link to it. He believes you can test it. He actually proposed a way to test the existence of the many worlds hypothesis. I personally wasn't, swayed to a great extent to reorient my lab to do this. And I think it had to do with certain types of Bell non-locality test and delayed choice tests and things like that. He claims it's not far away from being possible. Again, I'm not reorienting my lab from cosmology to testing many worlds interpretation. So there, I'd say he would disagree with you. On string theory, you may be right in what's called a direct detection. But in terms of indirect detections, there are many, plausible, at least hopes to do this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been looking for after, or at least say supersymmetry. We wouldn't have been looking for that. Look, just because we can't see a quark with a microscope doesn't mean that we can't see its effects indirectly. Like we've never directly seen a gluon, but we have evidence for it indirectly. And then the
same with dark matter.
Yeah, the same way. Although with this week, tomorrow, stay tuned for an interview. So tomorrow on my podcast, this is controversies week. So I had Eric on this week. He's super controversial. The least controversial guy I had on was Chase Purdy, who wrote a book about laboratory grown meat, which is really exciting to those of us who want to reduce the amount of meat that we eat. And so this is taking stem cells, culturing them, growing a hamburger in the lab, and it's called $1 Billion Burger for how much these things used to cost, literally, and now they're down to about $500. I'm still not going out to buy a platter of these for my kids on Father's Day, so he was the least controversial guy. Check his interview out; it was great. But then I'm having on Christopher Consolis, who is one of the co-authors of this study that claims there's 36 extraterrestrial civilizations in the universe. Have you heard that study before?
Yeah, that was big news this week. Yeah,
he's coming on tomorrow, and then after him, Kai-Xuan Ni, professor colleague of mine here at UC San Diego, is a leader on the Xenon 1-ton experiment that just had results pertinent to dark matter just yesterday. So tune in tomorrow. I'm going to try to just do no processing. They're going to do a slideshow presentation. Send me questions. Go on Twitter. Send me questions for those guys out there. I always love getting. I know Peter's a huge fan and sends always these great questions. So I'm going to put my link to Twitter. So ask questions of me there that you want me to ask, either about the Xenon experiment. And then, Tony, you and I still have to talk about the Anita experiment, and that's going to bring us full circle as we close out. Because Eric claims in geometric unity that it's possible that one could detect signatures of these 14-dimensional spaces that he conjectures, but using the properties of these strange particles that seem to be emanating from Antarctica that are detected by Anita, that have been used to claim evidence in other cases of a parallel universe. So that was about 3 weeks ago, controversial post in the New York Post, and now we've got this. I've got this incredible refutation on my channel by Abby Vireg, who's a professor at University of Chicago, and she is one of the people that is responsible for the actual experiment that she claims was taken completely out of context. So it's really hard to be an experimentalist because everyone puts this pressure on us. There's not that much new data that comes in. Physicists scrutinize over anything that literally is a 1 or 2 sigma or 3 sigma bump, like this Xenon experiment. So I'm going to ask about that tomorrow. To my colleague on the Xenon experiment. But it's a data star field. So what do you do when that happens? You either make up things that can't be tested, or you can actually, try to think about experiments. But look how expensive these experiments are. The Simons Observatory is $100 million project. We won't be on the air for another 3 years, and it'll take 5 years to be completed. It's not a game for people that are impatient. So we tend to recycle stuff in the past, but I'm interested to hear how we could test things both using cosmology, both using accelerator experiments, and perhaps using new, what's called phenomenology. If we do go ahead and do this webinar about the theory of everything. And one of the questions I'm going to ask is, who needs a theory of everything, in honor of my good friend, Tony Darnell?
Wow, thanks, man. Tropical Tom, thank you very much for supporting the channel. I do appreciate it. I got a couple questions here that I want to get to before
I got
we
time.
leave.
I got another 10 minutes.
Okay, well, Galaxia wants to know if you read Lee Smolin's book, The Trouble with Physics.
Yeah, I got about halfway through that. He was my first kind of foray into controversies in physics. His was actually, that book, Galaxia, was actually the first book I ever downloaded on a Kindle when he came to visit me in San Diego about 12 years ago. And I actually asked him to sign my Kindle. I can't find where it is because it's really old. But anyway, Lee's coming on my show this summer, talk about his new book, Einstein's Unfinished Revolution. I think that's the title of it. And then he had another book about time that came out. And he's just such a fascinating intellect, and he's what we call a mensch. He's one of the sweetest guys. But he did an interview with Lex Fridman, and you should check that out too. So Lex is copying me up for a lot of these guests. So stop it, Lex. It's annoying. But, he's never going to get Jim Simons, or he may get Eric Weinstein and other people. I don't think he's going to get Jim Simons. Wow. Never say never. But Galaxia, getting back to him, he claims that that there is no scientific method. And I'm going to talk to him a lot about that, because he would disagree not only with Popper, as Tony and I do, but he would disagree with the notion there even is a scientific method. And I think that's just he's such a brilliant mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I might even find myself agreeing depending on the words he uses, because it's interesting to the degree that we have a method. It's certainly imperfect, and it's certainly full of issues, among them these problems we're having in academia. That's part of our problem with science in general as well. So I'd like to hear what he has to say. Another question. What was I going to ask you? Peter wants to know, why don't I ask Brian if Weinstein is planning on publishing?
Yeah. So again, this is one reason to join my mailing list, because he is not planning on publishing anytime soon. Unlike Wolfram, he has no plans to publish his new theories of fundamental theories of everything. But what I did do is I got him to agree to let me take his PowerPoint slides from his Oxford lecture in 2013, and I converted them into a PDF. And when you guys join my mailing list, I will send you a link to download the slides, and you could peruse them, and then watching them along with the videos that he and I have done and he's done by himself, including his famous April Fool's Day, April 1st episode, where he goes through the slides himself. You can go through them at your leisure. I'm encouraging him to write a book, in all seriousness. He at the end of this conversation from this week, so again, check out the interview I did with Eric, part 2, on this week's podcast, and I'll put the link here. And Tony,
it's also in the description box of this this video.
So I asked him. I said, "When are you going to write a book, not just for your own theory of geometric unity, but also about kind of like your legacy and how you want to leave, in the spirit of what I thought would be my Father's Day episode, advice to your kids, to the world, about what means most and what matters most to you, what I'm calling an ethical will." I ask all my guests, what kind of wisdom, and not monetary wealth, do you want to leave to the future? What intellectual wisdom do you want to leave? And so anyway, sign up for the mailing list. Eric's got his podcast called The Portal. Apparently mine is going to be called The Funnel, because I want to get you guys all signed up to my email list so that I can keep in touch with you, because we have a lot more content coming out on the channel, and I want to share it with everybody, because it takes a lot of time to do it, and it's so much fun. I want to share it with as many people as I can. So we send out show notes and sometimes exercises for the reader. So I have one with a workbook that actually is in Python. and actually allows people to look at and also an animation of what's called the hop vibration, which is Eric's favorite intellectual windmill to tilt at. So take a look, sign up for the mailing list. I'll shoot you guys a copy of the slides as well as some fun other resources that I'm putting together.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like Brian Penley is commenting, all this cool science stuff almost feels like a potential scientific renaissance. Lol. Let me just say, Brian, what you're doing with these interviews is astonishing. You're getting all of the people I think worth listening to, and in one place, and you're cataloging some great conversations. I can't believe the people you're getting, and so this is like, I've always fancied myself, somewhat of an interviewer, but nothing like this, because it's, the people that you're talking to are almost all of them are my heroes or somebody who's super famous, and I would love to talk to anyway. So excellent work. Definitely subscribe to his mailing list as well. Let me just get to Big New Games question. He goes, I thought that LIGO gravitational waves would have shown multiple universes. I didn't hear that. I didn't. Yeah. Did you hear that?
No, that's not something I would either expect or have heard about from LIGO. It's not something I think that they have access to. What they do have access to is a way to test the Hubble constant, to look for this Hubble tension that you and I first talked about back in January, I think, Tony. And I talked about that with Adam Rees, and I asked him, what do you think is the most likely resolution of the Hubble tension problem? That was one question. Another question is, how do you propose that we can, better get at data to resolve it with higher precision in the future? That was number two. And then I asked him, how did you spend your Nobel Prize winnings? And you'll tune in whenever I actually get around to posting it. It should be soon.
Oh, great.
It was hilarious. He's a really funny guy. I have to share one thing from Adam Rees that he shared with me. I was saying, look, the Nobel Prize is so highly esteemed by the public. I get, and I'm sure you get, countless emails per week that say, Professor Rees or Brian, Professor Keating, I've got this incredible idea for parallel universe detection with LIGO or whatever. Not saying it's a bad idea, but if you help me with the math and help me get it published, I'll share the Nobel Prize with you. And without missing a beat, Adam said, that's how I won my Nobel Prize. So
that is funny.
With that, I sign off. I want to wish everybody a great Father's Day to all the fathers or father figures out there. It's more important than ever. We had a very stressful week, with the shutdown of academia, shutdown STEM, really evaluating what sorts of problems we might be facing in academia. And I'm proud to say that my team on the Simons Observatory and I have created a new partnership with the National Society of Black Physicists, of which I'm an honorary lifetime member, if you can believe that, that we're going to establish a program for members of the NSBP to receive summer internships that are paid quite handsomely with the Simons Observatory working over the summer this year. So NSBP members can apply for it and go to our website, simonsobservatory.org, and become a part of it. And we're looking to expand it. And the last thing I'll say is next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, I believe, is a webinar by the APS about diversity inclusion efforts led by my really close friend and mentor, Jim Gates. And he's the incoming president of the American Physical Society and the past president of the National Society of Black Physicists. He's going to have a lot to say. I might pipe up on the webinar to discuss the program that I just mentioned through the Simons Observatory. So with that, Tony, I really appreciate you. I appreciate all the listeners out there. Please go to the iTunes and rate and review the podcast so we can continue attract. Podcasting is all about getting good guests based on other good guests. So I've had on 4 Nobel Prize winners, a Pulitzer Prize winner, many great authors and thinkers. So help keep that going by getting the ratings and reviews, and that would really be a wonderful gift to me for Father's Day.
Okay, Brian. Well, we'll do that. I need to go back and re-listen to the Sean Carroll one because I think I missed that part where he said it could be verified. So I'm gonna have to go back and read that, listen to that again. So yes, thank you, Dr. Brian. You guys, you can head out if you need to go. I understand. I'm going to read a couple of comments before I sign off because there's some questions in here and I want to make sure I get to them. So.
Yeah. Link. I'll put the link.
Okay. All right. By the way, Susan, I just want to thank you also for your support. That was all of these are this is amazing. It's like you guys are like chipping in here and there. This is, if this happens, more and more frequently now, makes me very very excited, and it really helps because YouTube is a very problematic YouTube platform for me to earn any money on. Almost everything I post now gets demonetized for content ID problems that are illegitimate, and so this kind of support I think I get to keep, so it goes to me. And thank you very much for all of the people who have done that. It really does help Deep Astronomy keep going, because, like I said, I don't. You'd think that with the millions of views that some of my videos have had, I'd be raking in the money, but I don't make any money on any videos now. So they've all, with the exception of the Hubble Deep Field in 3D, that's the only video I have that's in the millions of views that is actually earning money. All the rest of them have been demonetized because of content ID problems. So thank you for your support is what I'm trying to say there. Are you still here? Are you still here, Brian? I thought you left. Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were gone already.
No,
yeah.
No. I want to give the link to the Sean Carroll video. Take care, Tony. Let's talk next week.
All right. Yep. See you next week. All right. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. There we go. So sorry about that. I didn't know he was still there. I would have had him ask a couple more questions. Big new games. LIGO then confirmed that multiple universe or parallel universes did not exist because there was no delay in the signals. Okay. But okay. I'm not sure what you mean there, but I will look into that because I've never heard it. Andrew, are you bringing back the Patreon pay service? No, I'm not going to do Patreon. They were taking a lot of. Wow, Neil, thank you, man. Thank you very much. Yeah, the Patreon, I'm not bringing it back because people feel obligated. I'd like it to just be a one-shot deal, and there's no real easy way for people to just like give $1 here and there. With Patreon, you got to sign up and do it every month or remember to quit. And while I do have PayPal stuff you can click on my website and just maybe give $1 or whatever, PayPal takes a huge part of that, and so it hardly makes it worth it. So dude, I'm getting a beer. Don't you worry, Adam. As soon as this is over, it is like 30 degrees outside Celsius, so I will be definitely drinking a beer after this is all over. Yeah. So, I didn't know I could do that, Peter. Okay, will do. Your Numa Numa Guy video was the best, and one with the lamp in the background. You remember that? Oh my God. Yes, my very first video I ever posted had the Numa Numa Guy in it. You don't remember this because this was back in like prehistoric times in social media, where the first video that I ever learned about that went viral was this guy singing what was called the Numa Numa song. It was Dragon Da Di Stay or something like that. It was a Romanian rock song, and there's this sort of chubby guy singing to it, and it was all the rage in 2006, and I included it in the Hubble Deep Field video. Wow, you remember that? That's really impressive. And that's right, I had this really cheesy lamp. In fact, I still have the lamp. There it is. There is the lamp from that video from 2006. That lamp right there. So I still have it. Oh man, that's bringing back memories. All right. No, I haven't tried any of those other things, guys, like YouNow or any of that stuff, because I'm looking at DLive a little bit for live streaming. So wow, Hans, thanks, man. I didn't know you could do that either. Yes, and Uncle Bill brings up a good point. I am also putting original content on library.tv. So library.tv is a blockchain-based video content provider like YouTube, where you can post videos there, download it, and you can tip or do whatever in Bitcoin. Not Bitcoin, LBC, which is library coin, which is some derivative of some cryptocurrency. And I like it. It's going really well. I've got a lot of followers on that, or I'm getting more followers on it. I haven't posted anything new because I haven't made any new videos in a long time. I've been almost exclusively streaming, and I haven't made any actual videos, although I do need to get some out. So So yeah. um, so if not Patreon, then the easiest way, Astrofire, would be just go deepastronomy.com and click on the donate button. I have a Stripe account and a PayPal. Would be one way to go about it. You can just do a one-shot deal there and be done with it. Or you can. YouTube has a membership thing where you could become a member of my channel, but that requires that I create some special content that only members can see. And that model is very hard for me to do because I just create content and I don't make anything extra that would be interesting to anybody who is paying, right? I just don't know how to add value to that. So I don't participate in that. But there is, like, the t-shirts and stuff that you see listed on Teespring, all that stuff I still get some money from. And I'm designing some new t-shirts now to go on that. So I'm trying to yeah, that's true. And Uncle Bill's the one that turned me on to it. So that's why he's helping me promote it, because it is a good platform. It's really very much different than YouTube in every respect. Get some Spotify Joe Rogan money. Yeah, tell me about it. Wouldn't that be cool? Hey Tony, our discussion about online data sources for astronomy made me think that could be a good episode, showing people how to use that data. Yeah, Simon, that's not bad. You mean a live hangout where we do that? Because I could do that on Twitch. That might be a good Twitch thing, because that'll be a multi-hour kind of thing. Like, you mean like download Hubble data? Or no, you were talking about, I think you were talking about SETI data last night, right, Simon? So the SETI data that's available for processing, we could have a stream on that for sure. Yeah, good idea. That's a really good idea. What's Cardano, Brian? So what still exists? I use Google Panel. Oh, thank you, Hans. That's really great. Brian, thank you, man. Thank you, Brian, very much. You guys are really, wow, this is like, I'm just going to stay on. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, did I give my, yes. Simon did give his presentation last night, Galaxia. So watch if you want to see the VOD on Twitch, it's there. It's there now. You have to look under Clear Skies Network, though. It's on that channel. So yeah, watch the VOD. I'm putting together a field trip to Kennedy Space Center sometime around the first week in August. If they fully reopen, you should come over and join us that day. So Tom, did you just join? Are you Tropical Tom on Discord? Because if so, then just DM me on that and let me know what your plans are, and maybe I can make it. I am not thrilled about being in public spaces right now, and it's going to have to be super. This pandemic is going to have to be super under control, and if any place it is not under control is here in Florida. So I'm probably going to not go, but because I have an annual pass, I can get in free all I want. But I don't want to go. They won't have the bus tours open, and you can't get to the Apollo Center any other way. So it's going to be kind of boring if it's not fully open. And if it's fully open, I'm going to need a lot of reassurances that that place is going to be good. So, oh, yeah, it's a cryptocurrency. I don't know about cryptocurrency. I just know about Library Coin. I know that it's worth, last time I looked, one LBC is worth 4 cents. So that's not bad. I survived Nibiru again. That's right. I promised to make a shirt about that, didn't I, Don? Didn't I, John? I got to do that. So yeah, okay, Simon, I agree. There's lots of options, radio or image data. There's lots of opportunities to get onto the MAST archive and download any kind of data you want, tests, Hubble, Pan-STARRS, whatever you want, and do some processing with it. So we could definitely do that. So that's not a bad idea, Simon. We should flesh this idea out a little bit more. It may not happen. The tours are not scheduled to start up till July 31, but I'm going to wait and see what the public safety step. Yeah, me too. It's going to take a lot to get me to go. just, Disney World's opening up in July. I think Universal's already open. But dude, I just think that's insane. Why would I want to do that, right? I love Kennedy Space Center, but I don't love it that much. And besides, I'm an old dude, right? So it's like I don't want to. I got to be a little bit more careful than everybody else. So James Webb launching date. No one. So there's I need to figure this out. I got to figure out how we can place bets on when JWST is going to launch. My money's on March 2022. I figure it's going to be a full year after the last launch date, which was March 2021. They're not going to announce until late in July when the new date is. But my guess is it's going to be at least a year after that. I think Northrop Grumman needs to just soak a little bit more money out of NASA, a little bit of that, get a little bit more of that cost plus gravy into their coffers before they launch this thing. And so I don't know. My money's on March 2022. I'd love to set up a thing where we could all bet and then put in a little bit of money, and then the winner gets like a windfall, because I think a lot of people have opinions about when that'll be. So Glycia is saying end of the year. That's one of her hopes. It's probably not a bad guess. But they're not going to say anything until sometime in July is what I know. No, I'm not working as a research programmer. I was a research programmer at the Dark Energy Survey between 2008 and 2010. And then after that, I left the University of Illinois, to go to the Space Telescope Science Institute, where I worked from 2010 to 2016, where I left to become commander-in-chief at deepastronomy.com, which I did for 2 full years. Spent all my savings, and now I am only doing it extremely part-time. So, okay, John, I'll make those shirts because I'm depending on you, man. I'll make those shirts. I'll make a nice font with it, too. I survived Nibiru twice. No, I get it, John. You really want that shirt. I know how it is. When will Starlink be functional? Boy, you got just full of questions, aren't you there, Robbie? Well, so I think if you go to SpaceX's webpage, they have a link where you can sign up for being a beta person. So they've opened the door for people to start getting Starlink internet service. So that'll probably happen before the end of the year. They'll probably have beta people using the service, and then it'll probably roll out sometime next year. The problem, as I understand it, are these receivers, right? The satellites are up there, but they need to make these little receivers that can get the signal and be relatively inexpensive, which I guess they're finding somewhat challenging. Yes, where I left to be CEO of Deep Astronomy. I hope I said that right. Maybe I didn't. I'm also putting together a social distancing Star Watch party here in the forest, just northwest of where you live. But it will not be until December, January for temperature reasons. Yeah, so you talking about Ocala National Forest up in there? Because that's really close to me. So, yeah. Again, DM me, keep me posted on Discord, okay, Tom? And we will talk about these things. We should probably do something here in Florida. The thing is, I'm not a big joiner of things. I tend to do things on my own, and I don't join star astronomy clubs and things like that. I just don't know why. Okay, all right, guys, we're gonna make the shirt. My shirt is in the post already. Yeah, how do they do that, Susan? I don't know. The fantasy football player. Somebody look it up and get on Discord, and if I'll help you. I just don't have time to set it up. So if any of you are interested in setting up a JWST betting pool, I bet this would go viral. I do. I think if we post it and then we talk about it on our streams, and then give some people a place to make the bets. It's got to be a betting platform somewhere that you could it's like the YouTube of gamblers or something, and you could set up a thing where you want people to place bets on it. I bet we could get some, and then the winner would actually get some pretty decent money, I think, if you pick the right day. So anyway, think about that. I could give you a free e-commerce cart. Oh, really? Okay. Well, Neil, are you also on Discord? The reason I'm pushing the Discord is that I'm always on it. Like it's right. I always have it right in front of me, 24/7. So it's the easiest, best way to get a hold of me is on my Discord server, the Deep Astronomy channel, and Uncle B and Better and Better and Peter Q and Galaxia. All of these guys help make this server really nice, and so it keeps it humming. They've got all the bots out of there. We don't get a lot of spam now thanks to those guys. So okay, well, thanks, Neil. I would like that. Right now I'm just using Teespring, so let's talk, definitely. 150 years after we discover warp drive. John, a little bit pessimistic, are you? Yeah, a little bit pessimistic. Okay. All right, guys, I really am out of here. It's 4:15. I've been streaming for way too long. I hope Brian remembered to turn off the stream on his channel. Otherwise, he got all of this. I will see you guys next week. Don't forget, I do Tony's Twitch Tuesdays. You can figure out where and when. The time is 3:00 Eastern. So you can check out T Cubed is what we call it. Also join the Discord server. And let me see. I usually have Stream Elements posting this Discord server on here, but it didn't. So let me just put this here. There's an invite to the Discord server. It'll last for a day and then it'll go away. It was just quick and dirty. But if you want to join the Discord server, go there and let me know. And don't forget to vote for Trump. Oh my God, don't get me started. Okay, guys. On behalf of Donald Trump, I want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, keep looking up. Oh, wait. Don't keep looking up yet. Also, I wanted to tell you that I stream on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights on the Clear Skies Network on Twitch from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time on the Clear Skies Network on Twitch. Tonight, I'm going to do Space News Roundup. And on Wednesdays, we talk about life in the universe. And on Tuesdays, it's called Philosophy of Astronomy, where I get philosophical on you guys. So go there if you want more content streaming-wise from Deep Astronomy. Okay. Now, thank you all so much for watching. And thank you all who gave to the Super Chats. Thank you all for supporting Deep Astronomy. It really, really does help. And as always, keep looking up.